Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome to another AMA here at Sushi. I hope you're all doing good today. Today we got GammaSwap coming in, and I got DeFi Devin here to talk all about their protocol and all that, and let us know what they're all up to.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, excited to be here and to chat more about GammaSwap and Sushi.
Yeah, man. I guess just to start off, like, tell me a little bit about yourself and just a little bit more about GammaSwap in general.
Yeah, about myself, one of the co-founders. I do more of the growth BD marketing stuff from the GammaSwap side. Then yeah, a little bit about GammaSwap. It's essentially a way for people to basically borrow the liquidity out of any AMM or any LP pool. Why someone would want to do that? Well, it's a better way to hedge potentially their LP positions. So hedge against like IL or LVR, or a way to speculate on the volatility of an asset essentially, because now you're taking the opposite bet of impermanent loss. So if there's any volatility, that's actually your impermanent gain, and all those fees that occur from borrowing, whether that's to hedge or to speculate, are passed on to the LPs too. So now those, since we're depositing all that liquidity for the sushi pools directly into Sushi Swap, those sushi LPs in our platform, they would earn, all the swap fees from Sushi Swap minus the impermanent loss, but now they also earn the borrow fees from those people taking the opposite bet. So yeah, they're a little bit better compensated for for their risks. And even without hedging, you can imagine, if there's more volatility, there's going to be more borrowing happening, and so those LPs will also earn more fees. So yeah, it's also dynamic based on the impermanent loss that they're experiencing as well.
Okay, so that's a pretty. I see your mascot is the big brain dude, right? That
Yeah,
does sound very big brain to me.
big
Um,
brain and impermanent gains.
yeah, because impermanent loss is probably one of the most, I guess it'd be like one of the, what's the word I'm looking for? It'd be like the factor that would scare you away the most from wanting to LP in the first place, right? Just having the
Yeah,
potential of being down in what you would assume to be a yield-bearing position, right?
so yeah, I mean, there are lots of ways to think about it. I think the way we think about it is that impermanent loss by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that LPs are exposing themselves to the volatility risks. That's why they incur that impermanent loss when the prices diverge. That's a loss to them, but they're being compensated in volume. I don't think that's in some ways, I don't think that's necessarily wrong, because that's really easy to like bootstrap, fees for a new pool from like swap volumes. And yeah, there's a lot of basically like trading that occurs. But I think as you see like pools scale, those fees are passed on to more people, but that implied volatility keeps decreasing. So the actual like yield that the LPs get, it's just harder to scale. So we're hoping that if we also compensate LPs with volatility, so also from the risks that they're taking on, then we have something that can help scale DeFi TVL and compensate LPs better. Because if you look at like traditional finance, uh, basically the edge has been to volatility sellers. Implied volatility has overstated historical volatility. So basically, there's extra demand for volatility than the equilibrium than there should be, because people basically buy options to like hedge their risks. Or yeah, lots of people like on Wall Street bets love to speculate, like on GameStop or other assets. And I think in crypto we've seen demand for volatility too. So we figured, okay, if we just allow people to buy that volatility from these AMMs, then those LPs, maybe can now expect to be positive EV on average, because there's typically a lot of demand and volatility for crypto, and now people can basically get like leveraged option exposure and hedge their LP positions in any token, not just what's supported by an oracle. So yeah, it's like a completely different option than like a normal like perpetual future, in the sense that there might be a little bit more slippage, but you won't get liquidated if the price moves against you. So if you bought like a call, in like something like GMX, you would get liquidated depending on your leverage when the price moves basically down. In like GammaSwap, if you bought a call on an alt, it moved 200%. You could get like 1,000% return on that, and if the price moved against you 100%, you would actually be in profit 10%. You would only lose money if there's no volatility, and you're paying that interest rate, but not making any money off the volatility or the impermanent gains.
Okay, it's an interesting way to look at, because I'm not a super big financial buff, I guess. Like I'm just not the most educated when we look at it like that. So the idea of that volatility, like you said, is you're looking for volume pretty much to produce more fees, or
yeah. So I've been in DeFi for a while, but my background's more just like general tech. So learned a lot through DeFi and just like some of the other people on the team. Well, it's just that there's correlation between volume and volatility, but it's just not perfectly correlated, right? But I think it made sense, especially when you first started creating AMMs, because that's how you could you instantly launch a pool, and some people are going to be swapping, and it was a great way to kind of like bootstrap AMMs, and I think now we're seeing maybe some ways where we can basically help scale AMMs beyond that. And I think part of that, people have realized, there's that volatility risk, not only from permanent loss, but also from like arbitrageurs, right? That the LPs absorb some of that flow. So this is a way where someone else can take the opposite bet of that. So you have a two-sided volatility marketplace, which we think will just help price the volatility better, which is really the bet that the LPs are making, right? That the volume is greater than the volatility risk, and they assume now it's okay. The volatility and some of that volume is greater than the volatility risk, so they can basically just they're better. They're compensating the actual like units of risk that they're taking along with the swap fees. So I think it will just help hopefully scale DeFi TVL a little bit better.
okay. So as far as you said, lending out liquidity, actual like liquidity from pools, right? How do
That's correct.
Okay. What's the mechanism for that, if I might ask? Or
Yeah. So when you LP into GammaSwap, let's say it was a Sushi ETH USDC pool. You could either deposit the ETH and USDC into our GammaSwap Sushi pool. We would deposit that ETH and USDC into SushiSwap, or if you're already LPing into that pool in SushiSwap, you can deposit the Sushi LP tokens. Now, once we have liquidity in that pool, people on the opposite side can provide collateral in ETH, USDC, or both ETH and USDC, depending on the option position they want to get, a call, put, or straddle. They would have to provide some collateral, but we can do something like all the way up to 97%. So not much, but a little bit of collateral to over collateralize that loan. And then essentially on the back end, we redeem the LP tokens for the underlying tokens, ETH and USDC, keep all the collateral in our platform. And then if there's any volatility, those underlying tokens, the ETH and USDC, are worth more LP tokens. So that's how we basically kind of flip the bet. And then we also have an interest rate that's based on utilization, and we do that off the liquidity invariant. And so that helps us basically protect ourselves against manipulations, and we're able to not use an oracle because that liquidity invariant isn't affected by the price of the assets at all. It's just the growth of the pool that it's calculating.
okay, yeah, because we've I'm sure you're aware, like we've deprecated Kashi a few months ago. The pricing oracle thing could be a real big issue as far as like manipulation, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to Sarong about it. I think the problem with Akashi was that it was actually they had an interest rate, and I think they were using liquidity variance in some way, but they were also using the price of the collateral, which is a different mechanism than how our platform works. But
Right.
similar kind of
When
concept.
things would actually volatility was really bad for us in that regard. having to do manual call to update the price oracle to make sure that people
Right.
didn't, pull more than they were supposed to, etc.
Yeah. So that's a good thing for us is that yeah, there's the volatility would actually be worth more LP tokens. So it over collateralizes the borrowed positions. Then yeah, if there's no volatility, then that's when the borrowers could get liquidated, depending on their LTV. If they open something like 90%, they could probably hold that position depending on the utilization for a few weeks, maybe a few months. But then 97%, you'll get more leverage, but you'll be closer to liquidation if you don't top up your collateral.
Oh. So if I'm understanding correctly, that's like the flip side, where you're saying
Yeah,
you want volatility
right.
always.
So the borrowers benefit from volatility, and then the LPs, as they do in AMMs, don't. But then if, you know, in like a normal, once I think people understand how to use GammaSwap and understand, how to profit as a borrower, in those periods of volatility, more people should borrow that liquidity out so now the LPs they can hedge, but even if they aren't, they're earning some of those fees at least in positions where they may not be, earning or even at a loss, depending on the volatility.
That's that's super cool, man. Is there like any particular risks that people should be like aware of besides that, as you're saying with the volatility?
Yeah, I think well, I'll talk about the risks about specifically for GammaSwap and how we're mitigating them. I think, with an AMM, there's always, because it's permissionless, there's always the risk that someone could come in, own all the liquidity, create a contract, and then like rug it that way, or like
Right.
manipulate the platform, or print a bunch of tokens. So we have those normal risks of an AMM, but I think sometimes that's the cost of permissionless finance. So it's always good to, do your own research, and even if you're not an engineer, at least learn to look over some of these solidity contracts, or you could just wait till projects more well known. Depends, I guess, on your preferences. So there are those risks, and then specifically to GammaSwap, there is the risk that maybe either through a flash loan or someone owns majority liquidity in the pool. What they'll do is remove all that liquidity so that the APY in the pool is really high. Let's say it's
Hmm.
like 1,000%, and then that would liquidate the borrowers faster. So maybe there's someone who took on like a huge position, and they're doing that to benefit from liquidating them. So essentially, we have a cap on well, as our interest rate's like Aave, but it's more exponential. So basically, we disincentivize borrowing after a certain utilization percentage, and then we cap it at 1,000% APY, and that's not including liquidity incentives. So that'd be a really rare event, like probably someone trying to manipulate a pool. And in that event, though, even with something like 97% LTV on the borrowing side, it would take about 24 hours to get liquid in our platform. So we think that's enough time for that borrower to, close their position, top it up, or for LPs to come in and provide liquidity. So I
Yeah,
think if you're borrowing from like a new altcoin or a project that you haven't read the smart contract for, and there's some type of manipulation happening, uh, you would have more risks there. But I think that's still enough time where people could essentially prevent that attack from happening. So that's how we basically enable the permissionless aspects of our platform, but we mitigate for some of those risks that could potentially happen if someone wanted to like force a liquidation.
cool. So anyone can make a pair then, since you're
Yeah,
permissionless in that way.
yeah,
All right.
definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah, I do kind of have a PSA. As you're saying, I think it is pretty valuable for people to be able to read, at least go on the Block Explorer and examine those contracts.
Right.
As I was saying earlier, like lately, Arbitrum's it's been it's like the new Binance, right? Binance Smart Chain in a way, where
Yeah.
it's so cheap to use that people have been like mass producing new token contracts that are malicious on there. I just see it a lot. So I
Yeah,
just
no, I think it definitely happens on Arbitrum because of how cheap it is and it's hot
so
right now.
accessible.
Yeah, I've seen a few rugs, so I think that's you know, I think permissionless finance is awesome, but you have to kind of do your own research. Everyone says that, but it's really important. And so I think, there are those risks that we can't mitigate for, but like, we can mitigate like someone trying to manipulate the platform and liquidating. So we felt like that was enough time where, um, it's fair to the borrower, but also, um, it doesn't it's not capping it like too low too early.
Oh, so what networks are you going to deploy on? Um,
But yeah, so we'll start on Arbitrum and mainnet. Our home will be Arbitrum, and that's where our governance token will be. And then we'll probably deploy on other L2s in the future. I think a lot of AMMs do that, so it would make sense if we're plugging into these AMMs to also do that. So I think like the major L2s, um, and probably just staying within EVM though.
okay, cool. Next thing I'd like to ask you is just like what you've been doing with Sarang and like as far as like what you've been doing with our infrastructure.
Yeah.
You,
So I've talked with we've talked with Sarang a few times. I think it was interesting. So we talked about Akashi a lot. It was interesting to hear, um, well, one, the different design choices, but two, also, you know, there are things I think we assume people will do that they won't. And so I think the approach now we're taking with launch is just to do everything kind of in batches, right? So next we had our alpha test net. Next we're gonna have our beta test net with real prices and hopefully battle test some of our theories. Then mainnet for the first month we're gonna be permissioned just to see with the test net in that first month to see if some of our assumptions on the interest rate parameters are correct and just get some actual data because since this platform hasn't existed before, there's no like back testing we could do and then back testing is also not always accurate. So then we'll do that, optimize the parameters, then go fully permissionless, slowly build on other chains, and then build out other products as well. Like I think if GammaSwap's successful, we'll kind of be like a Frax where we touch a few different categories in DeFi. Uh, so yeah, I think we're pretty excited to just keep building. So it was good to get his perspective on that, and then also the partnership with Sushi. At least initially, what it entails is emitting some of those Sushi tokens to the LPs on Arbitrum that are depositing into Sushi directly. So we're kind of starting it out as a trial period, and then if it makes sense and things are going well, like scaling it up from there.
cool, and that's using like the bento box and the Trident router and all that, essentially.
Yeah, I think initially it's just going to be the staking contract. So Master Chef,
Okay.
emitting from there. Yeah. And then I don't we're not doing any swapping in our platform just because we plug in directly into the AMM. So I'm not sure
Oh,
about the
okay.
router. Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't need that to use the Trident router then. Yeah, that
No.
makes sense.
Yeah. I think we thought about including it, but I think at least initially we won't. But we might do it in the future. You know, maybe it makes sense for us to do an aggregator if we have all this liquidity from different AMMs. But I also feel like there are already good aggregators and the AMMs already do some of that swapping too. So I don't know if we will.
Yeah, actually, we got one coming soon here.
Yeah, I saw that one. You're doing that, and then you just acquired like a perps platform too, right?
Yeah, Vortex. Is on Cosmos,
Oh,
but
cool.
I can drop those announcements in there in a little bit.
Is Sushi planning on expanding to like Cosmos beyond perps?
So I'm not in the developer wheelhouse, so I don't understand
Okay.
exactly the complications with going because it's not EVM, right? Unless you're using EVMOS or
Yeah, I think it
yeah.
can be, but it doesn't have to be.
So I'm not exactly sure how all that's gonna work out, but
Yeah. I'm pretty much an EVM maxi, Ethereum maxi. But the other ecosystem that really interests me is Cosmos, because there are a lot of things I think we've realized while developing and talking to other like smart people where it just makes sense to do things in the ground up, like on a chain, like DYDX moves to Cosmos. There's some cool dexes launching on Cosmos. They're just doing things you can never really do, or it'd be really hard to do on like mainnet, or maybe even some of these L2s. If you can control the MEV, I think it gives you just more flexibility as a developer. So I think that's one of the cool things about Cosmos.
Yeah, the EVM chains just make it a lot easier to, I don't want to say copy paste the deployment, but yeah, like the interoperability definitely is way easier for
Yeah,
sure.
it's easier to just kind of like build and like compose, and it's definitely the most trusted and like most battle tested and secure. But yeah, outside of Ethereum, I think Cosmos is cool.
So you're saying like Frax, you wanted to venture out into other products, right? Did you have
Yeah.
any that you'd be able to talk about or anything like that?
Some I can talk about, and some I'll kind of hint at, just because we haven't fully thought through the implementations. So I don't want to commit to anything that we know we can't, that we're not sure we can't build. But
Yeah, I got you.
yeah, so like stablecoins is one that we've been looking at. Like there's ways in our platform to like hedge stablecoin TPEGs, which I think for newer stablecoins could be interesting, but also just with maybe some of the stuff with the US, that could also be interesting as well. There's a new type of lending that we want to launch that has never really been seen before in DeFi, but I think might be possible through GammaSwap. And then yeah, just generally like structured products with other protocols. For example, like GMX, a few of the co-founders have been invested in us and are advising us. And if you combine like one of our options with a perp, like any option that has delta risks, you actually like remove that delta risk. So you essentially get like you can buy like insurance against liquidations on like an option or a perp.
Mhm.
So I think that's something we'd love to explore with like more options protocols.
Yeah, DopeX was talked to DopeX a few weeks ago, and that seemed that's above my it's above my brain. I don't
Well,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
the DopeX straddles are actually like are a straddle you could get from GammaSwap, but they're epoch based, so they're a little different. And then the way the counterparty is also different. Ours is like the AMM, theirs is actually a vault, but in some ways they're pretty similar products to our straddles.
The you're saying with the hedging the stable coins, I'm curious what the volatility, um, like how you guys would handle the volatility there. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's kind of exactly what we would do for stables, right? Like, I don't know if it makes sense to trade options on the stables, because even in like a slight depeg, if it moved to like 10 basis points, and even if you got 10x leverage, I don't know how interesting that is. So something like that, if you're doing an options platform, not on depegs, but just like deviations, might make sense to build that from the ground up. But like, if you're LPing into a pool, but it's a new stable and you want to hedge some of that risk, either through a vault or just bet on the depeg completely in another way. I think we could build products like that, but they would have to be different and yeah, not the implementations that we're doing for these more volatile pools. But I think there's demand for that, and then yeah, I think if you could create a market where you could just get like 1,000x leverage, for example, but the price kind of like similar to like a euro dollars market where the price is only moving like 10 basis points, then that
yeah,
becomes really interesting too.
I was gonna say it might work for different currencies against each other, right? Like USD versus the euro or
Yeah.
pound
You would
or.
need more leverage though to make it interesting. So that's why I think um it would have to be like a different implementation than how we're doing it now.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Oh, I guess you kind of explained it. I was looking through your Medium a little bit. Um, I see you guys got the straddle as well.
Yeah, so the straddle's the if you're gonna do a 50-50 pool, like in Uni V2 or Sushi, um, that's the default way to borrow liquidity, right? You would deposit 50 ETH, let's say it's ETH USDC, 50% of your collateral in ETH and USDC, and then you get a long straddle, like similar to Dopex's Atlantic straddles, but they're perpetual. Um, and the counterparty is the AMM, so there should be potentially a lot of liquidity, basically to borrow against. And then yeah, what we realized is if you provide collateral on just one token, you essentially get a straddle that's in the money. So it looks like depending on the side, it's actually more like a call or a put.
Um,
So I
Yeah,
think that
that's
opens up like a lot of optionality, especially for alts. Like I think alts are where sorry, there's a lot of volatility, but maybe less volume. I mean, you don't really see it as much because you're sharing the fees with less people. But there's a lot of IL risks there. So I think it'd be like interesting for people to take the opposite side of alts, especially. And it's just the first way you could buy volatility in alt, like buy an option on alt.
that might be interesting for I don't know the pump and dump coins,
Yeah,
right? When
I think particularly for those, but even just generally, I think if you have a lower float, it's probably going to be more volatile. So even if it's a good coin, there's more volatility there.
yeah, that could be really interesting for hedging. Like I
Yeah,
don't know
exactly.
with all the rugs and everything, that might I'm trying to like work it out in my head, right? But I don't want to say that'd be like a way to fight it or take advantage of the maliciousness of
Yeah,
those.
you could take it. You could, if you think someone's gonna rug, you could, you can make that bet essentially, and
Right.
short the liquidity. So you're basically betting on that it's gonna be volatile. You know, especially if it's like you could do a put, but you could even do a straddle. Like that's how I think. I'm like, yeah, maybe there's not a new project that I want to accumulate, but I'm like, I know some event's gonna happen. Like the merge, for example. I didn't really know what was gonna happen to ETH, to be honest. Like people were really bullish, but I didn't really know. And it depended a lot on how the merge went. So I would have loved to just like buy a straddle on that, for example. But yeah, I think it's a good way if you yeah, any volatility, but also just like hedging. Like maybe there's a new project that you're excited about, you think it's going to do well, but of course there's more risks with new projects, right? Like, are their products going to do well? What are their tokenomics like? Like, is that finalized? There's just a lot more risk with an early project. So it's a way you could provide liquidity to accumulate more of that token, but you can hedge against some of that risk, right? The risk of
Mhm.
being wrong, but also just the risk of providing liquidity in a more volatile, asset.
I got a question from B926 here. He's asking if you could explain how GammaSwap can help protocols bootstrap liquidity.
Yeah. So let's say if you're a project essentially, and you want to provide some protocol and liquidity in Sushi. Let's say your governance token is just Gov, and then you're denominating in ETH. So essentially, what you could do is you could provide, you could create that pool in GammaSwap. So you'd provide the Gov and ETH into GammaSwap, which would be deposited into SushiSwap. So you would earn if you're managing that protocol and liquidity for your protocol, you would earn those swap fees minus the IL. But now you could hedge also some of that risk of providing liquidity for your own token. So I think it's particularly great for new projects in that way. And then since you're hedging and also other basically retail Ps can hedge as well, we think it's a better way to attract liquidity and then also offer a higher APY since it's all those fees from sushi plus an extra fee from borrowers. So we've been talking to new projects about this in quite detail. Yeah, we're going to release a new article on hedging, not only for like protocols, but for like individuals that are looking at like newer projects. So we'll have some good guides on that coming out. But that's essentially how we think we could help there.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to check those out. Oh man, I feel like I opened a can of worms going through all the equations here in your Medium article.
Yeah, they're hard.
I didn't even know what the geometric Brownian motion. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's like calculus class all over again. But
It is. It is calculus, and I won't. I'll be the first to admit that I got a D in one and two. It was not
yeah, it's
particularly my strong suit, but
I think well yeah, I think that's like where we kind of one we had some trouble like educating, but we realized like okay, this is complicated on the back end, but we don't have to like necessarily make it complex for our users. We can abstract that complexity away, right? And just make the experience really user friendly. And so, although, like, for example, I think concentrated liquidity has some benefits for slippage, like, that's one thing I like about full range. Like, Sushi, Curve, Bouncer, they do the weighted, but Bouncer does full range too, is that, yeah, those LP tokens are more composable, and then LPs can be more passive, you know, and then if they have a way to hedge or they're just better compensated for that risk, like, we're really focused on making like having a path forward where retail can still market make and come out ahead. Because I think that was like one of the coolest innovations in AMMs was like democratizing market making to everyone. And I
right,
think
you'd want that full range liquidity over the concentrated, right? For the
yeah,
purposes of volatility.
we could do some stuff with concentrated liquidity. There's just more. We're still thinking through the implementation. There's tail risks that can happen since it's more like a club, and then you could have the issues of phantom liquidity at the tail end. So something we're thinking about, but really need to think through the implementation. But I think yeah, because in some ways we have the same mechanism as concentrated liquidity, like in the sense that the whole aspect of concentrated liquidity is that in higher periods of higher volatility, there's less active liquidity because more of that liquidity is out of range. So GammaSwap essentially does the same thing. In higher periods of higher volatility, there's less active liquidity because it's getting borrowed out, but the LPs can still be passive. Like the LPs don't have to do that work in GammaSwap. The hedgers and speculators do it for them versus like concentrated liquidity is relying on the LPs. So not against it. I think it has its merits, but I don't think it's, at least in its current form, like a great product for retail.
Right, with all the micromanagement and everything. That's cool that it's on the other party to basically do that.
Yeah, you can absorb a lot of toxic flow as an LP into these concentrated pools, especially from like arbitrageurs.
When you said
More importantly.
when you said phantom liquidity, what do you mean by that specifically?
So if you had a really tight range, and then people were borrowing against that, you would have all this. I mean, it depends how you're calculating it, but you could potentially have like all this P&L essentially that borrowers have, but the LPs either can't pay that or it's kind of like fake. So you would have to maybe have like some step in the middle, maybe that's like mitigating that. But I think something a concern that people have had with GammaSwap is that if liquidity is borrowed out, there could be excessive volatility, which is true, and we have parameters in our platform to like avoid it being over leveraged. I think something in concentrated liquidity could be worse. For example, if like an alt, like let's say like a crazy volatility event, an alt moved 10x and the platform at GammaSwap was leveraged 10x, which the leverage wouldn't be that insane. Like on alt, you can see the price move like 50%, which is already significant. After that, after basically all those borrowers claim their positions, another 50% off that 10x. But then in something like concentrated liquidity, you could see it crash like 100% after
Ooh.
that 10x move. Depending on where if the liquidity is wide, like full range, it wouldn't be as much of an issue, or still at those tail ends. But if most of that liquidity is distributed near the center, that's it. I mean, that would be like a black swan event, but those, those happen in TradeFi and they happen more in crypto. So it's always something to think about.
Yeah, that would be devastating. B as another one. What if LPs want to withdraw their liquidity, but the liquidity is being currently utilized or borrowed?
If LPs want to withdraw their, yeah, that's not an issue for us, um, because yeah, we basically it's not the LPs in our platform that are the counterparty. It's actually all the liquidity in the AMM, and yeah, there'll never be more liquidity borrowed out in GammaSwap than is in the AMM. So it's not a problem for our platform, since we don't actually manage like a separate pool. But it could be a problem depending on the implementation in something like concentrated liquidity, because not
Okay.
all that liquidity is fungible.
Right, like you were saying a moment ago. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions by chance? Don't be afraid to type them there in the AMA text questions. I know B can't be the only one wondering how any of this works. Because I definitely am. But yeah, no, this is all pretty interesting stuff. I'd like to actually try it out. So you got you have the alpha up right now, right, on your app?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And that's just it. Is that like on a specific test net, or is that like Gorelli, or I
It
see at
was
the top?
actually it was on our own testnet, just because we couldn't get enough Gorelli ETH for that one. Now we do for our beta, so we'll be doing our beta on Gorelli, and
Okay.
then after that mainnet. Yeah, I actually like did a post in Discord and Twitter like begging for Gorelli ETH, and we got enough. And then the next day, Layer Zero announced their like Gorelli bridge to mainnet, which yeah, some people I guess didn't like, but I thought it was amazing. I would have definitely used that, um, if we didn't already hit our goal.
Wait, so actually I'm out of the loop on that one. They're allowing bridging of actual mainnet funds to Gorelli, or like to be used as collateral for testnet funds? How does that work?
You could buy. It's like, well, I don't think Layer Zero does wrapping, but you could have Gorelli ETH that you buy on mainnet. So they have a market, I think, in Uni V2 for ETH and Gorelli ETH, and it was pretty fairly priced. I think when I looked at it last, it was like $2 for Gorelli ETH, which I think is
Okay,
like
so it's not
reasonable.
like, yeah, not like ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think if you want to use in Gorelli, you just bridge it to Gorelli.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really recent. It happened like last week. I only heard about it because I literally begged for it, and then all these people sent it to me, and I was like, man, I wish. Yeah, that's actually like that's super smart. I will use that in the future because yeah, it's hard to get enough Gorelli ETH to deploy. Like I think we needed to deploy all the contracts and pools we wanted to deploy. In the way we wanted to deploy them, we need like 100 Gorelli ETH. But then these faucets give you zero point 0.2 Gorelli ETH per wallet, per account. Like the
Right,
Alchemy
and you got
one.
to go and get the Twitter post on every single one, and
Yeah. It's like, what was I
yeah,
gonna do? Like, build a script and wait? I don't know, like 4 months.
yeah. I
'Cause I
have
don't have
seen
that many
like
accounts.
conversations about how ridiculous, it is, like the lack of testnet funds. You think that would just be like an infinite font right there, or like it'd be
Yeah.
minted or something like that. That's
Yeah, it's
interesting.
bizarre, but it's a smart fix, so I think it's cool.
That's cool. All right, man. I don't know, like if I'm taking up any of your time, like as far as like if you gotta do anything like immediately right after
Yeah,
this.
we have a internal call actually, so I might hop off to that one. But yeah, it looks like there's no more questions. So, yeah, thank you for having me, and yeah, really enjoyed this. Thank you for everyone who's listened, and yeah, if you have any more questions about the partnership or how GammaSwap works, feel free to join our Discord and ask
Yeah,
us more.
definitely. Let me drop that in here.
Oh yeah, you got it. So yeah, it's a
Oh, you,
great place to
you got
ask.
it already.
Yes, that's always a great place to ask questions. B is one of our community managers, so she can always get back to you. And we're often in the chat as well. So, um, yeah, thank you everyone for the time.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. So,
Awesome, man.
thanks,
Yeah,
man.
thanks.